Mesothelioma is one of the most aggressive and devastating cancers, almost always caused by asbestos exposure. For victims and their families, the journey from diagnosis to treatment is overwhelming, both emotionally and financially. One of the most important decisions a mesothelioma patient or their loved ones will make is how to pursue legal compensation. Two main legal paths are available: joining a class action lawsuit or filing an individual lawsuit. Understanding the differences between these options can make a significant difference in the outcome of your case and the amount of compensation you might receive. In this video, we'll break down what each option means, how they work, and the pros and cons of each, so you can make an informed decision. First, let's start with the basics. What is a class action lawsuit? A class action lawsuit is a legal case where a group of people with similar claims against the same defendant join together to sue as one group. Instead of each person filing their own separate lawsuit, one or a few representative plaintiffs file the case on behalf of everyone involved. This type of lawsuit is often used when the harm caused is similar for everyone, and the facts are essentially the same. In asbestos-related cases, class actions were more common decades ago, especially when large groups of workers from the same company or industry were affected. The idea is that by combining resources and evidence, the case can move more efficiently through the court system. Now, let's compare that to an individual lawsuit. In an individual lawsuit, the patient or their family files a claim on their own against one or more defendants. The case focuses on the unique circumstances of the individual's asbestos exposure, their medical history, their prognosis, and the specific damages they have suffered. Every aspect of the case is tailored to that one person, and the legal team builds the arguments specifically for them. Individual lawsuits are still the most common type of mesothelioma legal action today, and they often result in higher compensation than class actions, because the damages are calculated based on the specific harm to one person. So why would someone consider a class action instead of an individual lawsuit? One potential advantage is efficiency. Class actions can sometimes move more quickly through the courts because there's only one trial for the entire group, rather than hundreds or thousands of separate trials. Legal costs can also be lower because they are spread across all members of the class. Another advantage is that a class action may make it possible for people with smaller claims to receive some compensation when it might not be financially practical to pursue an individual lawsuit. However, there are downsides to class actions in mesothelioma cases. Because the settlement or judgment is divided among all class members, each person typically receives much less than they might in an individual case. The unique circumstances of each person's asbestos exposure and medical condition are not fully considered, which can lead to unfair or inadequate compensation for those with more severe damages. Additionally, once a class action is settled, class members generally give up their right to file their own lawsuits later, even if they believe they deserve more. On the other hand, individual lawsuits have their own set of advantages. They allow for a case to be built specifically around the patient's exposure history, their medical needs, their lost wages, and their pain and suffering. This often results in higher compensation awards. The settlement or verdict is tailored to the individual, not shared with a group. It also allows for greater flexibility in negotiating settlements, since the case is not tied to the needs of a large group. The disadvantages of individual lawsuits are primarily time and complexity. They can take longer to resolve because each case is unique and must be investigated thoroughly. The legal process can be more demanding, with more paperwork, depositions, and potentially a trial. Legal fees may also be higher for the individual, although most mesothelioma lawyers work on a contingency fee basis, meaning they only get paid if the case is successful. Another important factor to consider is the statute of limitations. This is the legal deadline for filing a lawsuit, and it varies by state. In most mesothelioma cases, the statute of limitations starts running from the date of diagnosis, or the date the disease should have been discovered. Because mesothelioma has a long latency period, often decades after exposure, these timelines can be complex. Whether you choose a class action or an individual lawsuit, it's critical to act quickly to avoid losing the right to file. It's also worth mentioning that in recent years, class actions for mesothelioma have become less common. Many courts have recognized that the damages in asbestos-related cases vary so much from person to person that class actions are not always the best fit. Instead, most victims today pursue individual lawsuits or file claims through asbestos trust funds. Trust funds were created by bankrupt asbestos companies to compensate victims without going through lengthy trials. These can sometimes be pursued alongside an individual lawsuit. So how do you decide which option is right for you? The answer depends on several factors. First, consider the severity of your illness and your financial needs. If you require substantial compensation to cover medical bills, lost income, and long-term care, an individual lawsuit is likely the better option. Second, think about the strength of your evidence. If you have clear documentation of where and when you were exposed to asbestos, you have a stronger case for an individual lawsuit. Third, evaluate the time you have available. If your health is declining rapidly, your lawyer can request an expedited trial for an individual lawsuit, which may move faster than you expect. You should also consult an experienced mesothelioma attorney before making any decision. These lawyers specialize in asbestos-related cases and can assess your situation, explain your options, and recommend the best course of action. Most offer free consultations, and because they work on contingency fees, you don't pay anything up front. In summary, mesothelioma class actions and individual lawsuits are both tools for seeking justice, but they serve different purposes. Class actions offer efficiency and lower costs, but usually provide smaller payouts and less personalized outcomes. Individual lawsuits take more time and effort, but they focus entirely on your unique situation and often result in higher compensation. Your choice will depend on your priorities, your health, and the advice of a skilled legal team. Remember, mesothelioma cases are about more than just money. They are about holding companies accountable for putting workers and their families at risk, and about ensuring you have the resources you need to face this disease with dignity. Whether you pursue a class action or an individual lawsuit, the most important step is to act quickly, protect your rights, and seek out the best possible legal representation.